Welcome back to the shop. We are still plugging away on this 1966 Volvo Amazon wagon. Today is Saturday, March the whatever, and it has been basically a full day of work on the project. Started this morning, my daughter had her basketball game. She won the semifinals, which means she advances on to the championship on Monday, so that's pretty cool. We did that this morning, hung out with Dad for a little bit, and after that, came back to the house and immediately started plugging away on the Amazon. The last thing I did, I left off yesterday after pulling the rear drums off. I didn't touch anything else in the back yet. I don't have the parts for it. So basically the next big thing was to get the master cylinder mounted, the Mazda master cylinder, and get some brake lines run. So we got the Mazda RX-7 master cylinder on there from an 85. I swapped two studs instead of bolts into the firewall here because with the Boss for the master cylinder right here, I couldn't get a bolt around that angle even if I took the reservoir off. These are 5/16 thread, 5/16 by 18 into the firewall. So I put a stud in there that's 5/16 18 on the back and then 5/16 24 fine thread on the front, a couple of nylon lock nuts on there. The only modification I had to do to this was I opened both of these holes up to 3/8 because the flange on the Mazda Master is ever so slightly narrower than the flange on the Amazon Master, and just opening those up, I mean, it probably took, I don't know, a 32nd of material out of each hole. It's not much, but it was just enough to allow it to seat nice and smooth on there. So let's go under the dash and get that. From in here, you wouldn't even know. The pedal is at the correct height. It's got a nice full range of travel. We used the original clevis. Got my cotter pin in there, I think. Yep, got a pin in. So we're good. I got all the groundwork for dual circuit brakes. I did both of those. The master swap actually went like smooth as silk. Really could not have asked for any better. Plus it looks great up under there. And then after that, I needed to run the brake lines. So I took all the old brake lines off, took the original junction block off, which is right behind the cylinder head, cleaned it up some, and then started bending lines and flaring lines and all that. So I'm making brake lines, everybody's favorite part of building a project car. I'm using the Nikop lines just because it's so easy to work with. This is going to be the driver's front. That'll be the junction block, down the firewall, across, down the frame rail at an angle, kick back up, run along the inside of the frame rail, past the clutch, and then here out into the wheel well. And this part here will get a 180-degree bend on it to go into the brake hose. But yeah, I think that's maybe the most complex one on the car, but getting there. I used to really dread that. I have, last project, I finally broke down and bought like the good flare tool that you clamp in the bench and has this little turret and make all the right flares with. It's sweet. This is the setup for making brake lines. You can get these 25-foot spools of Nikop line on Amazon or eBay or Rock Auto for about 25 bucks, about $1 a foot. If you buy them at the parts store, they're about 70 or 75, so don't get ripped off. Fairly basic tools. Anytime you're cutting it, you're going to want to use a tubing cutter. You can get that at Lowe's or Home Depot. Now the end, even when you use a tubing cutter, it's going to leave a bit of a burr. So I like to use just a countersink bit and kind of whip it around there a couple times to clean the burr off. Then we're going to move over to our flaring tool. This is like the star of the show. These are available from Eastwood and eBay and Amazon, a whole bunch of places. I think I got mine on Amazon. There's a bunch of copies of basically the same tool. They range from 120 or so, which is what I paid for this, all up to like 400 if you get the name brand thing, but they're all the same. I recommend making the modification to remind yourself to put the flare nut on. Essentially, and it comes with dies for 3/16, quarter, half, and 3/8 line, I think. But the dies are two-piece, and the nice thing about it is you can make either bubble flares or you can make inverted flares. This car uses mostly inverted flares except for on the calipers themselves, which are bubble flares. So you can do both. The little two-piece die here. Let me, I'm gonna move the camera around. And then there's a turret here to do different operations. So operation 0 is the first thing you do. It's just flat, it pushes the line in. And then for me, I'm gonna go to operation 1 for 3/16. I'm gonna operation 2 for 3/16. And that'll make my inverted flare. So let me show you how. So you take a brake line, chamfer it a little bit. It's fine. And then make sure your die is oriented correctly. I'm making the double flare, so I'm going to use this side. You can stick out some, put the other side over it, clamp it down. Not tight, because we're going to go operation 0, which is going to push the brake line back to where it needs to be. Then we really tighten the die. I'm going to put it on operation 1 for 3/16. This is the single flare, right like that. A couple more clicks to operation 2 for 3/16. Put bottoms out. There we go. Loosen the die up, open it up, and what you have is a very nice double flare. Really beats the hell out of using the tool that clamps onto the line under the car. I mean, there are cases where you need to do that, remake something on the car, but for making fresh brake lines, this thing is the truth. And a couple tips for working with this line. When you get it, obviously it comes on a spool. I generally clamp one end of it and give up, half an inch or whatever, clamp it in the vise, take a piece of wood with a 3/16 hole drilled through it, stick it through the line, and then as you pull this, like with, the line in the vise, as you pull it down the length of the line, it'll straighten it out pretty good. You're gonna get some wavy stuff in here like this, which I think looks like crap. So it is very tedious, but another use for these little dies is you can put them around the line like so, and then just clamp them in the bench vise by themselves, move them a little bit, clamp it again, and this gets the line pretty damn straight. Now, like I said, it is tedious, but I don't like looking at brake lines that have a whole bunch of waves and bends and stuff in them. It just looks crappy to me. So I'll generally take the time and go through and do this. Yeah, it's sort of funny. There's some stuff on the car that really bothers me, like this, and then other stuff just doesn't. So, pick your battles. This happens to be a battle that I've picked. And here's another cool thing you can do with these blocks. This is the line from the master, and I need this fitting to point this way. Runs down along the firewall to the distribution block. But I can hold the line in that block clamped, and then I can use a 1/2 inch extension. Actually works really good for a good radius. Use that from the radius, and then I'm going to take an adjustable wrench and hook it onto the flats, and at this angle to make my bend over there. So it's like having a 4th set of hands. I really don't dread running brake lines anymore. There are a couple cases where it'd be nice to have a better tool that clamps onto the line to make the flares on the car, but that's sort of an edge case. But I've got some clips of doing that. So after the brake lines, I did the hard lines, then I wanted to get the flex hoses on, because on this car, it's hard lines off the master all the way down to the wheel, like the wheel area, and then a flex line from the body to the wheel hub, and then there's another short hard line from the flex hose to the caliper instead of the flex hose going directly to the caliper. So these are the hoses from the flex lines, which connect here to the caliper, which connects there. Don't mind my child with, the croup over there. I just thought it was interesting that everything on the entire car is inverted flare, if we'll focus. There we go, like that, except for the actual connection to the caliper, which is a bubble. Still looks like 3/8 thread. So I ordered new brake hoses. Admittedly, I got the cheapies from Rock Auto, but I ordered them for an application, and you would think it would have worked. I was able to make it work because I'm building my own brake lines. But if you had ordered those for like a drop-in replacement on a stock vehicle, you'd be upset because they're just wrong. The original brake hoses have a 3/8 inverted flare male fitting on both ends, which is sort of weird for a brake hose. The hoses that I got had a 3/8 female on both ends. No, 3/8 male on one side and 3/8 female on the other. I just realized I said that wrong. The hoses that I got had female fittings on both sides, 3/8, thread. However, the flare in one side was the male section of the inverted flare. The flare on the other end was, let me just show you. All right, so these are our two hoses. Obviously this is the original. Both ends of this are 3/8 24 male thread, and both ends are the male section of the inverted flare. On the hose that I ordered from Rock Auto per application, the issue is we've got male threads here, but we have the female portion of the fitting. I cannot make, my tool does not make the male portion. You can't have the male portion on the line. Now this side, it's female threads, but it has the male portion of the flare in there. So this is actually going to be the hose for the rear, and it's going to work fine because I'm just going to take this T, which I already had, put it on the right end, and this T will go over here, you get the idea, and then these will go out to the wheel cylinders. But yeah, if you had ordered these as a replacement for these, and didn't have the flaring tool and didn't plan to make brake lines, that wouldn't have worked out well for you. On the wheel hub side, because that was the female, I wound up having to get a union, like a male-to-male union, screwed that in, and then that gave me the male fitting to go the hard line into the caliper. One extra spot, I don't think it should be fine. Got the front lines all done off the master there, across the firewall into the original cleaned up new junction block. None of this is tight. I gotta go back and tighten it up. From there we go down, kind of along the firewall there, down there, and then around here, kind of behind the cross member a little bit. So I'm holding the flex hose into the bracket, which I had to punch out to 5/8 hole with a hose clamp. I think that'll be okay. Over to here, and I had to use a union to change it from female to a male fitting on this side. Again, I think that'll be all right. And I did basically the same thing on the other side. More or less just ran it across behind there, kicked down the firewall. I'm not a huge fan of that. The original brake line looked like that too, but whatever. And then same thing over here. I don't remember if I finished this or not. I did. Have a 45 behind the cross member for protection into the flex hose. I've got some video of how I put that together. Actually, I'm pretty happy with how that turned out. Anyway, I'm rambling now. What else do we do today? Cleaned up the grounds because I've noticed the car was real slow to crank over. So the ground strap on the block, on the frame, and then the ground wire connection behind the battery, cleaned all that up. The big goal for this weekend, I really wanted to drive this car. Unfortunately, just because of the state of the brake lines and the fact that I don't have all the fittings that I need to do it, so some of those are coming in the mail, and I don't have enough actual brake line to do it. I have enough if I were to mix the NiCop and the steel. I don't really think there's a reason to do that. The stuff I ordered, a new roller brake line to do the rest. It's cheap enough. It's 25 bucks for NiCop. So I run that from the back. Also got the new clutch master, clutch slave, and clutch line on there. Clutch flex line, rather, I should say. I did also have to make a new clutch hard line. The old one was just crusty and gross. Plus, it really didn't take too long to do. So yeah, this video is going to be sort of disjointed. Like I said, I'm just sort of throwing some clips together that I have. Some from late last night, some from today. Hopefully it kind of makes sense. So yeah, the big goal was to get this thing running on its own fuel tank today. I did that. I was able to, I redid all the fuel lines under the hood, all the rubber fuel lines, put some proper clamps on it. The big question mark was the fuel pump, whether it was going to be any good. I just primed it with a little bit of gas and cranked and eventually it sucked fuel out of the tank and ran and did fine. Currently preparing to try and run this thing on its own tank for the first time. I think I've got about 2 gallons of fuel in there, so we're going to drain it into the tank. Let's see what happens. Let's see. Does the Amazon have fuel? Yes. Yes, it does. So one of the big things I wanted to do this weekend was drive it. Second best was get it running off its own fuel pump and fuel tank. And there we go. Definitely has a miss. Doesn't really want to idle very well, but we'll get there. Yeah, you know, doing all right. So the first place that I want to take this car, the first kind of trip I want to do with it, is take it to my buddy Kyle's. I've known Kyle for, gosh, 15 years. Kyle is actually the reason why my 79 240 ever ran on Mega Squirt in the first place. Years ago in like 2011, I think, I had ordered a whole bunch of stuff and a whole bunch of like Mega Squirt parts and ECU and harness and everything, and then went, oh crap, I don't know what to do. Kyle was going to school at UNCC at the time, and I was working on the car, you know, some weekends in Charlotte. He ran over and was like, hey, I've got this Mega Squirt car, this is what I did, this is what you need to do, and off the races. Anyway, I said all that to say, he has a channel, Long Automotive. I'll link it in the description if I remember. He does some really, really nice videos. He has not been doing the YouTube thing long, but he sort of went max effort on it and has put out some beautiful stuff. Anyway, the meet he hosts every year tends to fall on my birthday weekend, April 26th. So he's doing it that weekend. I want to take the car there. It's about it's a 5-hour drive in a normal car, right? So a normal car that can do 70 or 75 on the highway, it's going to take you 5 hours. This thing, who knows how long it'll take, if it'll make it in the first place. So in preparation for that, I hung up my little dry erase board over here, sort of marked down all the stuff that I need to do, and I'm plugging away at it, making pretty good progress, honestly. The two big things that might hold us up are tires and the windshield. Tires, just money. You know, it's going to be $300 for cheap crap tires. It'll be, gosh, $500 or $600 for like the tires that I want, which are like kind of period looking Firestones. Anyway, maybe I'll get lucky and find some 15-inch takeoffs on Facebook Marketplace like a crackhead. Excuse me. Next thing is the windshield. The car came with a windshield seal. I've never done a windshield before. Don't particularly want to learn on this one. The windshield is not an inexpensive piece. I got lucky that it came with one in the first place. So we're going to hire that out to a pro. And then hopefully they don't screw it up. Yeah, apart from that, this is one of those days where I worked on the car for, 10 hours, 10 or 11 hours. And it feels like I didn't get anything done, but really I got a lot of little piddly stuff done that needed to get done. Oh, I got the drive shaft in there too. Drive shaft, new drive shaft bearing, rubber supports, all that. So that's done. So I marked some stuff off on the list that I wanted to get to today. Air filters, adjust valves, plugs, diff oil, transmission oil. I did none of that. Probably do most of that tomorrow. That's kind of low-hanging fruit. It should be fairly easy. Yeah. That's where we're at. The other big thing this car needs before it can be roadworthy is an exhaust, because what's on here is falling off. Last time I bought the Sport Kit and had Tony in town adapt that to work, there's nothing to it. It's a long hunk of straight tubing. an over the axle and a muffler. So I went and talked to him the other day, and he's like, yeah, just bring it in. He'll fabricate something up that'll work just as well. Probably be less than half the price, especially after if I were to buy it and pay him to make it fit like I did last time. Yeah. So if I feel like it tomorrow, if I don't go to the range or something, we'll keep working on this. Tomorrow, if I do work on it tomorrow, my goals will be plugs, diff oil, transmission oil, and the brake lines on the rear axle. For the section actually on the rear axle, I'm going to use steel. I don't know why. In my mind, it's tougher, and you might get rocks and stuff hitting it. I don't know. I've got it. I'm going to work with it. Plus, there's no real bends that need to be done. It's just like 2 straight sections into a T, so that's fairly easy. Yeah, at least I say that now. In theory, it's fairly easy. Yeah. Cow meet is in 47 days. Can I do it? I don't know. But hang out and we'll find out together. So, yeah, thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out. Maybe in the future I'll do a live or something. Probably nobody would watch, but maybe I'll just plug the phone into power and put it on live stream and work on the car for a day. I'll try that tomorrow. That might be fun. Anyway, till next time, appreciate you watching, appreciate you hanging out. And to rip off Dean, why don't you get out in your garage and fix something? Thanks, y'all.